Town Sound, where we celebrate band directors doing big things in small towns and making big impacts on music education. Today we have Hannah Drake, who leads ensembles from Harrisburg, Illinois, and Harrisburg High School, where she has had her students play at Super State at the University of Illinois, and has also had her kids selected to perform at Theater Fest, which is our Illinois theater convention that we have every year. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad you agreed to do this. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, me too.
Tell us a little bit about how you became a band director, why you became a band director, and any influences, or maybe where you went to school and things like that.
Sure. I went to high school at a county school, Gallatin County, which is in Junction, Illinois. So my town that I grew up in is Ridgeway. It's actually a little village of not even 1,000 people. So I had about 50, I think 7 in my graduating class. I was involved in music forever. It was like the thing in my family. I have an older brother and a younger sister, and when we all registered for kindergarten, it was just known that you're going to register for piano lessons too. And then I went, I think 4th or 5th grade, I started playing a band instrument, and my parents were smart, and we were very fortunate to take, private lessons all through school. And I always say, I begged my parents to let me quit piano in the 4th grade, probably through lots of tears and tantrums. And my mom told me, she's like, okay, but you don't get to join band. So I stuck it out. In about 7th grade, realized I'm like, okay, I'm kind of okay at this. Maybe I actually really like it. And then it just kind of stuck. And I went through a brief, identity crisis in maybe early high school, where I thought I would be a marine biologist for a hot minute, but always knew I wanted to teach music. When I went to college, it was kind of during the job crisis, where you had 100 people applying for one job. And so my dad was a special education teacher and taught at a specialized school and became principal. And so I always saw him through that and was involved in his school and was really passionate about special education. So I actually have a degree in music ed, and I have I went to school in Indiana, but over here it'd be an LBS 1. I've never taught on it, but I wanted to go ahead and get a special ed degree just to kind of keep options open. So I went 1 year to Southeastern Illinois College, and then I went and got my undergraduate degree at the University of Evansville in Evansville, Indiana.
Great. Now, did you have any influences growing up? Any band directors that you really loved, or maybe ones that you didn't like and you wanted to be better than?
Sure, yeah. My middle school, because it was a K-12 school, so it was my middle school into the early parts of my high school career. My band director was Kathy Hanrahan, who she left Gallatin to come to Harrisburg. I remember being just devastated whenever she left. And then after that, it was kind of a revolving door of directors. So I think that's really when it solidified, okay, I want to do this. But Kathy was just a perfectionist. She was a brilliant flute player. I looked up to her as a piano instructor and a piano player as well. Such a talented musician. And she paved the way for that. And then my private applied teachers were a husband and wife duo who were retired and then taught privately. And he taught in the Harrisburg school system. Kurt Burklow is his name. And then Marilyn Burklow is my piano teacher for pretty much probably early middle school till when I graduated through high school. So yeah, those 3 individuals were crucial in my entire life. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's crazy that I talk to so many different musicians that say, yeah, I started on piano, and about 10 years old, I decided I was not going to play piano, or I wanted to quit, but my parents wouldn't let me. I played piano until 5th grade, and then I wanted to play percussion, so my mom let me do that, and decided I didn't need to do both. But then when I got into high school, I wanted to play piano again, so I started taking lessons, took a few lessons, and stopped that when I went to college, and then decided 3 years into college that I was going to be a music director, so I started taking piano lessons again. I think it's just crazy how our mind works like that, and a lot of us are like that.
For sure. And then it's so crazy too because you hear students who played and then they're like, man, I wish I would have stuck with piano, or I wish my parents made me. Yeah, I mean, it is such a huge part of my identity. I mean, as a musician, it was kind of, I feel like when I went to college, it was one of those things like piano being your main instrument. The majority of people just assume you're choral, and I'm like, oh no, I'm a band person like through and through. I've found my way into doing a lot of vocal stuff, not myself, but like teaching that. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine my life if I didn't play that. And I mean, I tell students or people or students that I teach or have taught over the years, I'm like, literally piano is the reason I was not a broke college student. I got a church job, I played weddings, played all, like just the most random things, and it kept me from being just broke in college. So, and then I would say another person, I would be remiss if I did not mention her, but I had an aunt, or have an aunt, who lived in the Evansville area, and she was a music therapist, and she played the harp at several of the hospitals in the Evansville area. So when I was in high school, I saved up my money and bought a harp and played that, and drove to Evansville and took lessons for several years too. So she was incredibly encouraging as well. So I would say those four people for sure.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's cool to learn. I also wanted to be a marine biologist when I was about sixth grade, and I have aquariums.
It is.
I don't
like,
either.
I hate the beach. I hate salt water. So there was, and I had never even been to the ocean. I have no clue where it came from. But it was very short lived. Thank
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your program. What did it look like how long have you been there, and what did it look like when you started, and how has the evolution of your program, went?
So I started teaching here in 2009. Before I even graduated college, I had interviewed here, and I always joke, but it's kind of the truth, that I feel like Harrisburg just called a day earlier than another school. So I had two interviews whenever I was finishing up with college, Harrisburg, and then I also interviewed at Spencer County, Indiana for a special ed position that I was also had a little bit to do with like music. I think it was like assistant marching band and like junior high cheer coach. So all of these things, and I'm not kidding, Harrisburg called like on a Monday and they called on a Tuesday. And so one of my high school teachers left my high school and came to Harrisburg, and I saw him at our holiday basketball tournament, and he had told me that he thought this position was open. So I had sent in a letter even before it was posted, and then turned in all of my stuff and interviewed, and that's kind of how I ended up here. And like it's really kind of was the start of theater really for me too. The superintendent talked about that and was involved in the theater program, and really because I played piano, that's how I got involved in that as well. The program was really in an interesting place. It was a block schedule at the high school, and so it had music performance block, and so it was year long. And the band was the choir, and the choir was the band, and it had fallen kind of victim to a revolving door of directors. I think my sophomores at the time, if I remember this right, my sophomores and juniors maybe, I think they had a different director every year of school since like fifth grade. And so, I mean, we all know what happens. It just starts to kill your program. When I first started teaching, it was the first year on traditional 7-block schedule. So choir and band were separated. they were really struggling with going opposite of honors classes and core classes. So kids could, were in band and then they would drop for a year and then come back. So a lot of consistency. I mean, no consistency with the director, and then scheduling was really giving them problems. So when I first started, I think if I remember this right, it was 29 students, 4 in color guard, and 2 of those color guard students were foreign exchange students that year. So this little tiny program, they were wonderful musicians, but it was this really small program, and when I interviewed, they said they were really looking for consistency. And so Harrisburg is about 20 minutes from my hometown, so that was a huge draw. And to be honest, Harrisburg felt like the big city compared to little old Ridgeway, so it felt like this massive school at the time, and kind of you grow up with a lot of your teachers leaving to come here for bigger student populations and financial reasons and things like that. So at that time it was like, oh my gosh, this is a dream job. And so, really came in not knowing what to expect, but it was a little bit of a struggling program from a numbers standpoint, but the kids had always been really strong musicians.
Yeah. So your band, your concert band, has been selected a couple of times for Super State. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and what it meant to you, what it meant to your kids, and how it was to? I've never done it, and I really want my kids to do it. What does it all entail? How'd you do it, and how did the performance go?
So I've said this many times, and I'm not blowing smoke. I truly believe this. I feel like a lot of our success, or my success in band and theater, have really just come from ignorance and sure, we'll try it. Blind ignorance, I guess. Really, I mean, so our middle school director is Mark Hinshaw. He went through the Marion program. He went to U of I for his undergrad, so he really knew about the program. That's one thing I will say from growing up in a really tiny town. There were a lot of things that I didn't know a thing about. Nothing about ILMEA, nothing about Super State. I mean, those were foreign things. So, going to solo and ensemble was this huge achievement. We didn't do organizational. So it was you don't know. In a blessing and a curse, I guess. You don't know what a big deal some of these things are. So you just enter into it blindly, and it's sure, let's roll the dice and see what happens. I really feel like that's kind of what happened. Mark encouraged me to try for Super State. I was like, I don't know what it is. He's it's Concert Band Festival. You have to send in a recording of, I believe, 12 minutes of music, and they send it off, listen to it, you get invited, and then you get to do up to 20 minutes of a program at U of I. And he stressed over and over, he was like, now, nobody gets in on the first try. This is not an easy thing. Don't be discouraged, just give it a try. I'm like, okay, sure, let's go and see. We auditioned with Claude T. Smith's Concert Variations, Parita Roca, and man, I can't remember our third song for our audition. And we, that time, I think we auditioned at SIC. And just at the theater. And so got recording equipment. It wasn't anything fancy at all, but sent off our stuff, and it was like, okay, we'll see what happens. And so it's in early April. Your deadline is due in February. I think we probably turned it in the night before it was due. And then in April, the names came out, and it came out on a Saturday morning. And I can remember refreshing my email and seeing, congratulations, your band has been accepted to Super State. And the first thing I did was Google other Harrisburg high schools. I just knew this was not us at all, anywhere close to it at all. And so I called Mark, was like, holy crap, what have I just done? He was like, Hannah, this is a big deal. I'm like, yeah, what am I gonna do? So we spent the rest of the semester working on it. I had some friends come out and kind of work with our kids, and really it was just like you were happy to be a part of it. I mean, you're going there, and I can remember it was just one of the most intimidating things. One of the Bloomington high schools were there, and then right after us was Marian Catholic. I mean, just titans. And like, I was up on stage for awards. I'm like, please just punch to be in the room, whatever. And playing in that auditorium there's nothing like it. I mean, the kids you can't explain what it's like until you're there. And so it was a great experience. Our band was, I mean, it was some of the best they have ever played, that I've had a group play in their life, and it was just such a proud moment, and to be one of the only high schools from the South, because I think there's a large part of that I identify with being from the South. I think theater has really changed my perspective on what that means. And I always joke now of like, it's not, what everybody thinks is the South of Southern Illinois is not. Like, right. Then you have the Super South.
Right.
And so I think representing that, it was like, you're happy to be there and show that there are things happening. We applied the next year, and really it was, if I'm being honest, I want to apply to make sure like you weren't getting a pity vote the first time of like, okay, do we actually earn and deserve a spot here? That time around, unfortunately, our performance, and if you talk to any of my kids from that year, it was not what we hoped. Every run can't be your best run, and unfortunately for us, it just wasn't our day and wasn't our time, and we had a really rough run. I think our brass had really kind of overplayed going up into that, and we had super trumpet heavy. We played Rossano Galante's Landscape. And my first year, we played Three Tapestries. And then second year, we played that. And then we maybe did First Suite, something like that. But just, it was just not our time. I just remember it being heartbreaking is kind of how you've left. It's like, you work all this time. Now your kids know what it's like. They know how prestigious it is. And you just want it to be your best. And it wasn't heartbreaking. So then COVID happened, didn't have it. Those guys, I guess, the COVID kids who would have been maybe like sophomores or so, then we had all a junior year. So then Super State went to 3 classes instead of 4. And truthfully, again, we applied because it's like, okay, now let's really see if we've still got it. Because every band, your programs are changing like crazy because of COVID. And my kids, I tried to just have the mindset of them of, this isn't going to last forever. And what do you want to look like on the other side of it? And you can be a band that is a COVID casualty, or you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, even when it's the darkest, of we still want to be the best that we can be and keep working hard and keep pushing for when this is over. And so we really had that mentality. And I said, you're down to 3 classes. Let's really see if we can hang with the big guns. And made it in a 3rd time. That time we played Art in the Park, and then we also played Each Moment Should Be Lived Fully, which is a beautiful piece kind of about COVID. And I mean, the kids were really connected to it. And I can remember like we got done, stood up, took our bows, and probably one of the most proud moments of my teaching career. You just feel the tears in my eyes, and like those kids who had gone that first time, when we didn't crash and burn, but you just know you could have done better. And they felt the same way. It was just a really emotional performance. It's like, I don't care what happens from here. Like, getting here is an accomplishment, but having a performance that you couldn't have done anything better. You wouldn't have changed a note about it, and it just felt amazing. So Yeah, Super State has been, we've been very, very fortunate to be able to attend several times.
Yeah. It's hilarious that you mentioned when you read the congratulations email, you think this isn't for us. This has to be for somebody else. Being from Nashville, I always say, now you know it's Nashville, Illinois, right?
Right.
Like, you know that.
Yeah. Yeah,
And we applied for a grant one time for a Fender grant. Like we started a popular music class, and I wanted to see if we could get some guitars, and we won a grant
that's
at the
amazing.
same time that Nashville, Tennessee was flooded, and they thought we were Nashville, Tennessee, and they were going to give us a bunch of guitars. And when they found out we weren't, they didn't. So,
Shoot. No. I always like, I mean, we'll do these things with theater, and it's like, now anymore, like these Zoom calls or whatever. And so you constantly are introducing yourself. And like, hi, I'm Hannah Drake. I'm from Harrisburg High School. It is in the South. No, really, really South. I'm like basically Kentucky and Indiana. I'm not married to my cousin. I do have indoor plumbing.
that's right.
Thank you. And like now it's just this thing of like, it is truly amazing. People have no idea this part of the state even exists.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
wild.
That's funny. So let's talk a little bit about your theater program. You are well, you're known for both your concert band being phenomenal and also that you have a great theater program,
Thank
and you're a
you.
very talented director, and you do both junior high and high school, and your shows have been chosen to perform at Theater Fest, which is a huge honor. Talk a little bit about that program and how you built it.
Yeah, so I can't say it anymore, but I was like, I'm not a theater kid. Well, I wasn't, but I just wasn't growing up. I was in like a random show. I feel like everybody has that canon event of I was in The Wizard of Oz, but I was like that awkwardly like tall munchkin that shouldn't be there, but I'm actually 10, but I'm just really big and tall. So I was in a couple shows. Wasn't involved in theater in college, didn't really know anything about pit orchestras. That was like a foreign concept to me. And then when I came here, the superintendent said, because he was actually a theater director for a couple years, he was like, well, if you get this job, we would love for you to be involved and music direct. And I said, sure. I mean, again, it was like the job crisis of like, there's, you're competing hundreds of people for these positions. I'm like, you could have asked me to teach Spanish and I would have said yes. You're a varsity football coach. I'm your girl. Like, you just say yes because you have a job and you're going to figure it out later. So had no clue what it would meant to music direct a show. And so I taught the kids their song, played piano, did my thing, and that was it. So that summer he called and said, hey, and his wife were stepping down from working on theater, and encouraged strongly, because you can't legally say forced, but it was clear the expectation was you need to take theater. And I told the kids, I'm like, I'm going to do this for 1 year, and I'm going to do Cinderella, because you can always find at least one boy who can kind of sing, and then I'm never doing this again. And then I'm going to quit theater. So my kids talked me into Hairspray, which was not Cinderella, not knowing at all what I was getting into. But luckily we actually had, tons of diversity, and the kids were super excited about it. Ended up getting a bunch of athletes involved, and the show went over amazingly well, and it kind of changed my life, truthfully. Did a couple plays after that, and then it was really something I ended up enjoying. I'm like looking back at it, that side of things, I think life could have gone so differently had I known about that ahead of time. I am not a performer myself, but I definitely think my brain is probably wired really well for like musicals and pit playing and things like that. That has just, I grew up being a classical piano player, or trying to be, and it would take a long time to get there. It was not an easy thing, and just like the technique and the reading and the theory behind it never really, it wasn't something I could just really click with. But learning how to read chords, playing in lots of different styles, I think that it's so fast paced that's something, once I did get introduced to that, became like one of my favorite genres. I mean, to be able to sit down and play a show, I mean, that's one of my favorite things. Stage directing, again, just didn't know much about it, but it's now, I truly love that, our theater program as much as I love our band program. So I think just consistency and getting the kids involved and then showing them different things. They were doing a lot of golden age shows and had never done anything like a hairspray. And so I wouldn't do this now, but looking back, I mean, it's what was good for the program. The following year we did Footloose. And so just getting kids to buy into it and being involved. And I think that's really kind of stuck and has changed the culture of the performing arts here at our school, to see the kids with, just crazy amounts of talent and being able to share that in ways that, you don't see in choir necessarily, or, that may not want to sing at a talent show or something like that. So, yeah, and that's kind of how we got our start in theater. I didn't know anything about the ITA, which is the Illinois Theater Association, or Theater Fest. That was introduced to me by Alan Kimball. And again, just blind ignorance, I guess. Alan said, "You should apply a show." I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. So our first show was Charlotte's Web, actually, and we performed as a showcase. So you get an hour to do your show. You've got 20 minutes to set it up, an hour to perform it, and 15 minutes to take it down. And so we performed at U of I our first time, and we got to run it, I think, 3 times. And then the following year, we did a small musical and took that and then kind of worked our way up. And then we've taken Seussical, and then we've also performed with The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and then most recently Matilda last school year. So the Theater Fest and ITA has really opened up a whole world that just didn't know anything about, and like a whole side of theater. And just from, a professional standpoint, especially working on the all-state shows, and those are things that are like, just felt like these unattainable dreams. And so getting to do a lot of that stuff has been really special.
And you were chosen to direct the Theater Fest, the big Theater Fest show too, weren't you?
So I was music director for Shrek the Musical, and then I was on the technical side for The Prom, which was 2 years ago. I was assistant costumer, and then I did hair and wigs and makeup. And then this most recent year was the 50th anniversary of the Theater Fest, and so I was the music director for the opening ceremonies, and we brought a bunch of alumni back and kind of did an hour-long program from past shows. So hopefully one day, so the way it works with theater, or with the ITA and Theater Fest, is every year there's a new person who organizes and plans the whole festival. It's the executive director, and they get to select the all-state director, and both of those things are only once in a career. You can do it one time, and that's it. So I know everybody kind of has that on their bucket list. I am no different. So you hope that one day it's like your time to get to be able to do that, which would be a dream and an honor for sure if that ever gets to happen. And I'm lucky enough for that.
One thing that I think is remarkable whenever I talk to you, which, by the way, just so everybody knows, I've used you for the last, 10 or 15 years just to get advice on how to do shows and what shows I should do, and if our school could handle that show or whatever. We talk quite a bit about that. But one thing that I think is so cool is that you remember everything, it seems like, in every show. You're like, oh yeah, that show's really cool, but there's this one part that you have to be really careful about. Which we all know those big, like if you're doing Annie, you're going to have to do the, getting out of Broadway and doing that whole NYC part of the show. It's going to be a big thing. Or if you're doing Wizard of Oz, you're going to have to do the Munchkin sequence, which is a huge thing. Oh my God. But you remember the small things that are difficult. You remember like, yeah, you're going to have to do that big thing that everybody knows, but you remember the tiniest ones, the ones that drive you crazy. And that's what I think is so cool about talking to you about theater.
So we've had the same costumer who, like, from a theater standpoint, I joke but I don't. Like, she is Saline County in Southern Illinois' Betty White, like, must be protected at all costs. It is Janet Hart is her name. Her husband owns Hart's Music Center here in Harrisburg. They're, born and raised here. She taught here forever. His parents, or his mom was a music teacher. I mean, millennials around here, teachers all remember Mrs. Hart from when she taught. And then Janet was our family and consumer science teacher. Her daughter went through our program as an actress, got a degree in all of this. So from theater standpoint, I mean, I truly don't think there's anybody who I could respect more and value their opinion and look up to in every possible way. There's not much that I do without talking to Mrs. Hart first. I joke with the kids, but it's not a joke at all. I'm like, if Mrs. Hart does not tell me no much, but when she does, I don't question it. She's probably one of the only people I listen to in my life. When she says no, I say, okay, and we move on to the next thing. But she gave me the best piece of advice that I've only not listened to a couple times, and I understand why it's sage advice. And I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying is, like, as a director, you want the kids to like the show, but you have to love the show, because they come to rehearsal and then they go home and they have their life, but you live it. For 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is out of your time, you are the one living that show. And I think that's probably where a lot of that comes from, because you eat, sleep, and breathe it. And I think with being a small program with, she's paid as our costumer, and then myself as director, and then that's it as far as staff. So you get really good at the small things, the painting and the costuming and props and whatever, but you in turn then know the show inside and out and every little thing about it. And I think that really comes from that, of like picking a show that your whole heart and soul is into, because you're the one that has to learn it and you live with it for that period of time until you're done with it. And so I think that goes hand in hand, and where that comes from for me personally.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about your small town. Talk a little bit about what your town means to your school, and what your school means to your town, and what, those kinds of things that people don't really understand when they're in a big program.
Sure. Every year I kind of talk to the kids and started off the same way. By the time they're seniors, the kids could probably give my little opening day speech or about band. And I would say this about probably every band program, but especially small town programs, and especially programs where your kids are the band. You don't have concert band, marching band, jazz band, pep band, all the things. Like, it's all the same kids. They're just playing in a bunch of different styles, right? So I always tell my kids, you're the most public group in the entire district. You may not always get the respect that you deserve. You definitely don't get the recognition that you deserve. But you're the most public group, and you don't get an off season. But even though people may not, it's a compliment. The kids, I know our community loves our band program. They may not always, gush over them or tell the kids that, but I know that they appreciate it, and because they notice when we're not there, and you hear about it when you're not there, and it's like, oh, well, thank you. Our superintendent and I had this conversation, not too long ago. It's like, when you have a solid program, people think it's really easy. And I'm like, I'm glad we make it look easy, but you will never understand the hard work that's put into it. So, I'd like to think, and I would think a lot of people would echo this, but that our band program is really a huge part of the backbone of our whole school district. You're asked to play at all the random things, which all band directors go through that. It's like, we have an opening of a whatever. We just played last year for the grand reopening of our Walmart. It was never closed, but we were there for when it reopened. So we played, you play for all of those things. And it is a compliment. You can get bogged down with, it's just, I'm exhausted and don't want to do one more thing. But it is flattering that people want that. Being in a small town, your high school especially, it's the thing that people go to. It's on a Friday night at a football game. Your whole town is there. Especially a program in a school district that there's so many people who graduate from there and then come back to here. So that culture is just so important to, in all aspects of your town. And then in turn, we have just the most supportive community of us if we were to need anything to come out, and to buy a ticket, buy a whatever the fundraiser is, sponsor this. And it's not just band. There our extracurriculars and clubs and activities are so well supported by our community. So it does, all of the support goes hand in hand for sure.
Yeah. One thing as an outsider looking into your program, as I'm talking to more band directors, I think it's really cool how all of our programs are different. Mm-hmm. They kind of we mold our programs to fit our personality, and kind of your program has kind of molded you in a way. Like, you didn't do theater, you weren't interested in theater, and then now all of a sudden that's exactly what you want to do, and you do 2 shows a year, 3 shows a year, and it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I think just I've tried to imagine, if you were to go and restart at a different school, what that would look like. And I'm sure we've all had those times in our career, but truthfully, it's like coming into it, not knowing what you want to do was a blessing in that sense of like, what does this look like? What do you hope it'll be? And I don't think there was ever this idea of like, didn't even know what a super state was. Had no clue what Theater Fest or anything like that was. So you just kind of change as your program is growing. And I think there's a part of it that I look at, this is how I went through my program and some of the things, how much I didn't know. And so you do a lot of stuff, or at least I do a lot of things and try to do things with the kids and new activities or new experiences, so you can show them what all is out there, because we're really blessed to be able to, from a show standpoint, band standpoint, they have everything that they could want. We're providing them with, these great things, but the times that you get to go take the trips and play in these other venues and do the super states and the theater fest and stuff like that, it's like, for some of these kids, they would have no clue what that was like. So I relate to that and try to think, okay, if I can show them something and it clicks, and maybe it's the thing that turns them onto that for their own future.
Yeah, that's really cool. Your program is unique, and that's one of the things that I like about it. I had never met somebody before I met you as a director. I had never met somebody that really, really loved the theater aspect of what we do, and I thought that was really cool. And really, whenever we did one show every other year for a long time, and we're now doing a show every year, and it's, I kind of fell in love with theater after talking to you about your program and things like that. I had never been on stage. I had played in pits before, but I had never been on stage before. But now, I'm blocking, and I'm studying shows, and I'm doing sets and set designs and set construction. So it's really cool, and I thank you for all the advice you've given me over the years. It's been a godsend for sure.
I think there's some of it that's like going into it not really knowing what to expect. You just find your footing. I would go back and even show, especially my first few years, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would never do this again. But in the moment, it was like, this is all you knew how to do. So it was the best that you could do at that time. I do think there's a lot of aspects of the band world that I bring into theater. And so I have a student he went to SIU for theater ed, and they were asked, I remember he called me randomly and he was like, I just gave a presentation about you. And I said, describe your high school band director. And he was like, the first word that came to my mind was militant, or not band director, but your theater director. He's like, I would say militant. I was like, well, dang, Jack, holy crap. He's like, no, I think that's part of why we were, could do what we were do, and the, repeat it over and over and over again, and having that mentality, the marching band side of like the visual aspect and cleaning things. I think that that's really helps go hand in hand and is like very evident in our program from that side of things. The majority of our theater kids are my top musicians in band, especially from our leads. And I think that there's a reason for that. We don't have choir as a class. So these kids who want to sing are in band, and then they get to sing in shows. So that kind of is what helps us out with that. But you definitely see the correlation of your kids who are your strongest musicians are your strongest singers on stage. And then, working with them throughout the years and acting. And we have a really active, very successful speech team. So then they're really working on those acting skills in there. So I think just fine arts, we're trying to work together, and being in a small school with, like the majority of us, a shrinking student population, they're in everything. So I think, giving them those opportunities in the areas that they excel in, your band kids getting able to sing in a show, your show kids being able to act in speech, it all works together and helps us all be successful.
Yeah. Well, in closing, can you've kind of already given a lot of advice, but do you have any specific advice that you would give to somebody who finds themselves teaching in a small school who maybe knows nothing about a school like that size?
The first thing I would say, and this really stuck with me on our new teacher orientation, whenever I first started teaching for my very first principal, and it was like a couple things, but the main one was to be present in your school. And I know it's a little controversial because of everything that we know mental health wise since COVID. And your contract. And like that's the big thing with teachers, is working within your contract. This is what you're paid to do. Leave it and go home. And I will be the first one to tell you that I absolutely suck at that. I am probably, if there's a number one offender, maybe ever, it might be myself. And so there are definitely, I wouldn't recommend that, the path that I have, found myself on at times. But I would say in a small school especially, be seen, go to all the things. Because if your kids notice when you're there, and it's not the band things, go to the volleyball games, go to basketball, go to a dance recital. I'm not saying spend your entire life going to every nighttime activity, but truly no program in my mind can be successful until you, especially in a small school, until you have made a connection with your students. And that starts with, what is important to them and where can you see them do those things and support them at those things, and building that relationship. I try to tell the kids, because they're spread so thin at times, I'm like, I get it. This is not your number one right now. And on this day for 40 minutes, I need this to be your number one so we can get done what we need to do. You work your absolute hardest for me in this time period, and then you get a break from this. But if we're battling it out for, what your focus and what your attention is, we're just spinning our wheels, and we're never able to have forward progress, which that is the goal of every rehearsal, is how can we move forward. And staying in neutral or moving backwards, that's not a great place to be. But I don't think that I could have ever had conversations like that my first year if I came right out of the gates with that. And who is this 20-something person telling me what to do? Finding those times of, okay, no, these kids don't have the bandwidth for this right now. Look at the athletic calendar. There's 8 different sporting events today. they're not going to practice. So then how can you get the most out of that one rehearsal that you do have, and really like learning your students? So be involved. You want to balance and have a healthy life at school, but also being involved with where they are too, and knowing your kids. And I think people who don't have that, they're missing, a huge part of their program. If they're struggling, that would probably would be one of the first things I'd talk to a new teacher about, is so learning your community and what your student culture is like, and how that fits in with what you want to do with your own program.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Thank you for coming on, and especially, it's April 15th or 16th, I guess, when we're doing this. It's right in the middle of our spring season when we're really, really busy. Not
Sure.
that we're ever not busy, but it seems like we have something every night. So I thank you very much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve.
And thank everybody else for listening to Small Town Sound. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with another music educator and help us continue to highlight the amazing work that's happening in small schools. Until next time, keep making big sound wherever you are.